Before we start the video, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I appreciate all the support I received from you. And as always, all the information in my videos is rumors taken from the internet or the street. I'm not saying the information is fact.
Pick your mans up.
And just because people used to come through shooting us every day. And this block, words can't even explain, man. Can't even explain.
Yeah, man. Little school Valley, 05 way on money.
Young Money, man, they in the building.
600 boy, LA, man. LA Capone, man. Get it to him, man. OC2 boys, man. Team
Rondo number 9, man. Number 9 shooter, you hear me?
Hey, bitch, this little bitch. Yeah. Fuck is wrong with you? Hey, I am Brick Squad. Brick Squad, boy. Fuck is you talking about, bro?
You have to be willing to die or go to jail for 100 years if that's the lane that you're stepping in. You have to understand that whether you're 15, 16, you got to think like a man. You know what I'm saying?
So don't be in it. Oh, you're not? Why does everybody say you're only 16 years old?
They say what they want to say.
How old
How old are you?
300.
In depth, the murder of Malcolm Stuckey. This is a mini-series I intend to start doing, where I go into depth about individual situations, instead of whole stories about one person. In the first episodes, I will go into the murder of Malcolm Stuckey, a murder that has become well known to the public, because it was the murder that King Von beat in trial. However, new information has come out about the murder, background stories, documents and other interesting things that I intend to tell you. This is a big reason why I want you to take my videos with a grain of salt. There are constantly new details, information and documents about murders that have not been known to the public before, not even for news sites, where I also pick up a lot of information. Just like you, I also constantly learn new things, and get new information to me that does not agree with previous information I had. News sites are also often wrong, for example that D. Roy was not killed in the sports store but in a convenience store nearby, and another misinformation that I will now go into in this story. Hope you will find it as interesting as I do. The first thing I will go into is the information that has been false. When you have previously read about the murder in articles, you have long had the impression that Malcolm Stuckey was the target in the shooting and that King Von, allegedly, killed him because he stared at him at the party. This does not seem to be completely true if you read Big Mike's statement in the police document. As I understand it, it was not Malcolm who stared at King Von, but two other males at the party who gave him hard looks and whispered to each other. Just as I mentioned earlier, you got the impression that Malcolm was the one who gave him hard looks, and that was why he was killed, and that the other two got hit in the crossfire. However, as I understand it, it seems to have been the opposite. The two men who, according to Big Mike, gave King Von the hard looks, they were the intended target, and Malcolm was caught in the crossfire, or killed on purpose by King Von because he was a witness. In the song What's Next with Jizzle Bucks, King Von himself says, "A person told on me before, he got a longer sentence, I think they gave him 28, he rather talk than listen, he was the only one that told, they killed the other witness." This has not made sense to me before, but now it does. In a news article published by Youth Today on the 2nd of June 2021, which had read police documents before they came out on the internet, told about the incident in detail, because the weapon used in the murder of Malcolm could be linked to a gun supplier in Mississippi, who sold guns to a contact in Chicago who later sold them on to gang members around Chicago. On May 29, 2014, a birthday party was held at 5722 South LaSalle Street, a two-story house divided into 3 apartments, situated a couple of blocks east of Interstate 94 and 3 miles straight west of the Museum of Science and Industry, where Malcolm worked. Before Malcolm arrived at the birthday party, King Von was already in place and was chatting up other party guests. However, His visit would not be long after he spotted two rival gang members, who gave him hard looks and whispered to each other according to witnesses at the party. The mother of the son who was celebrated noticed that something was not right and said to King Von, "Don't start no mess in my house." According to police documents, King Von replied, "I'm not on that." He smiled at the mother and then left the house. Now Big Mike comes into the story. According to Big Mike's own statement in the police documents, he was not at the party from the beginning. After King Von left the party, Mike received a call from a person not named in the police report, that King Von needs him as muscle for backup. Big Mike then spoke with King Von, who related that both he and another person were at a house party. King Von told Mike that there were some other men at the party who gave him hard looks and whispered to each other. Mike related that Von wanted to go back to the party with him as backup. Mike later stated that he was picked up by a female about 10 minutes after the call. He stated that she drove her grandfather's silver Oldsmobile Alero. He got into the front passenger seat with King Von behind him in the back seat. Mike related King Von started to discuss what had happened at the party and then asked Mike if he was decent. He understood that it was a term for whether he was armed. Big Mike stated to the police that he was armed with 15 to 16 rounds in his Glock 40 cal semi-automatic pistol, and that Von then showed him the gun he was carrying, a 40 caliber Smith & Wesson, indicating to Mike that he was also armed. On the way back to the party, King Von called the partygoer on the phone and said, "I'm coming back, take the children inside." According to Big Mike, King Von also asked if those individuals were still out in front. According to Mike, the person King Von spoke to said that they should not come, because one of the individuals had a gun on him. King Von replied that it does not matter, because he and Mike had two guns. The female, whose name one cannot see in the report, could be the same girl that Von was accompanied with at the party earlier. The mother I talked about earlier said that she saw a heavy-set female together with Von earlier at the party. This is a long stretch, but Von actually talked about a heavy-set female in his lip service interview. He said that she gave him oral sex in order for him to use her car to get from point A to point B. However, that's a long stretch. Just found it interesting. Anyway, King Von, Big Mike and the unnamed female parked the car a block away from the house, facing north. Both Big Mike and King Von exited the vehicle and headed for the house. Mike related they cut through a gangway and that Von was in the lead, and himself close behind him. According to Mike, neither Von nor he himself made any attempt to conceal their faces. They just had their hoods up and pulled around their faces. By the time King Von and Big Mike had cut through an alley behind the house, Malcolm Stuckey stepped onto the sidewalk to smoke a cigar. Malcolm and other partygoers planned to shoot hoops nearby, before returning to the party and eating the food the mother had made. Once Von and Mike made it to the end of the gangway, Mike observed a male black with long dreadlocks wearing an orange shirt, standing at the mouth of the gangway. Mike stated that he and the unnamed male in the gangway stared at each other for a brief moment, before the man turned around and fled on foot north from the location. Mike stated that he then saw King Von chase that person out in front of the house and began shooting, without hitting his target. But by the time Big Mike got out in front, he observed one victim already laying face down on the grass between the sidewalk and street, bleeding out. That victim was Malcolm Stuckey. King Von struck him with one bullet 2 inches below the ear, that tore into his brain, one bullet to his right thigh, and 2 bullets in his buttocks. If I understand correctly, it does not say anywhere in the report, but if I interpret it correctly, Malcolm just happened to be in King Von's way, saw Von's face, and Von chose to get rid of the witness. When Big Mike looked up from Malcolm lying on the ground, he observed King Von chasing another person toward LaSalle Street, shooting at him while shouting, "Why are you running?" After chasing his target all the way toward the end of the street, King Von caught up with him and shot him in his right leg, but the victim still managed to flee into the lot towards the alley. The screaming at his victim as he shot seemed to be a recurring theme with King Von. In the report on the murder of Jakara Barnes, a witness claimed that King Von shouted, "Yeah, bitch-ass people," while shooting at them. After Big Mike saw King Von chase and shoot, he started chasing and shooting at the other rival who was running north. Mike stated that he let off 15 to 16 rounds at the man, and knew he hit him, because Mike observed the man stumbling as he ran. The victim was hit in his left foot. Big Mike then related his gun was empty and he then turned and ran back through the gangway that he and King Von came down originally. As he ran down the gangway, he could still hear King Von firing. Shortly afterwards, Von came up behind him in the gangway and eventually the alley. Big Mike then related that King Von came into the alley, and then ran 2 houses over, and fired 2 more shots east into a vacant lot at a person who was laying in the lot. This was the same person Von shot in the right leg. The man who Von shot in the leg stated that as he fled into the lot towards the alley, he observed King Von and Big Mike entering the alley from the gangway they had came down. The man related he fled into the lot again, this time towards LaSalle. However, he turned and observed Von at the entrance to the lot, with a handgun pointing in his direction. Von fired 2 more shots, striking the victim in the face, hitting him in the mouth and breaking his jaw. However, the victim was still able to flee from the lot and call 911 to get help. Mike observed the victim, in the lot, bleeding from the mouth. Taken together, the victim was shot in the face, right thigh, left calf and left shoulder. Mike and Von then jumped back in the car, where the female was still sitting, and they sped away from the scene. As I understood it, the girl had no idea what King Von and Big Mike would do when she drove them to the location, and was therefore not charged with any crime. According to Big Mike himself, he threw the gun he used in Lake Michigan. Much thanks to Big Mike's very detailed statement in the police interview, the police were actually able to solve this case. However, as you all know, Big Mike changed his mind in the last second, and chose not to testify against King Von, which meant that the rest of the evidence did not hold up in court, and King Von was released after 3.5 years pending trial. Big Mike was instead sentenced to 28 years in prison, 16 years for aggravated battery, and an additional 12 years for turning down the deal at the last second, that would put King Von in life imprisonment. Another reason why King Von was not charged was because he really did not say a single word to the police. He denied everything. He denied the murder and attempted murder, denied being a gang member, denied that he even knew Big Mike, and denied that he had even been to the party, or known anyone there. King Von really stuck to the code. The victim, who was shot in the face and body, was quickly taken to the hospital in critical condition, and fortunately he survived the shooting, which the victim who was shot in the foot also did. Now we come to the identity of the 2 victims who were shot and survived, and here I want to be very careful, as Malcolm is the only one named in the report among the victims, because he did not survive the shooting. However, what is mentioned in the report about the 2 unnamed victims is that one of them is a gangster disciple who is a member of Jaro City, and the other is affiliated with black gangsters. The victim King Von shot in the face and body is said to have been someone from Jaro City, who it was still remains unknown. It was not Weedy from Jaro that many have speculated about. As I understood it, he was shot on the 2nd of June 2014, so just a few days after the murder of Malcolm. However, many do not know about that incident, and therefore speculated if it was he who was shot by King Von, due to tweets from Jaro City members where it said, "Get well, Weedy." Also, the guy who King Von shot was 24 years old. Weedy was only 21 or 22 years old in 2014. This was the mini episode about the murder of Malcolm Stuckey. Rest in peace. Credit to Yoka Guston Shirakology, who posted the police documents. I send my condolences to the families or friends who have lost loved ones to the gang violence.